Hi, this is Lauren, and right now I'm critiquing a couple minutes of video that Judy sent in of her and her horse Sky. So let's go ahead and see what we've got here. She starts out with the disengage the hindquarters. Now right there though, you can see from the beginning, the first 2 seconds into it, she needs to be soft to the bit before you continue on with your disengage. And at any point in the disengaging, if she pulls her head away from you, then you need to focus on softening to the bit. And that's one of the things that I see throughout this couple of minutes of clips that you sent to me, is that as you're doing the maneuvers, like I said, the softening to the bit comes first, and that's your communication line. So if your horse is not soft or is pulling on you or kind of jerking the reins out of your hands or anything like that, the maneuver that you're trying to accomplish is just simply not going to work at all. You have to have that softness to the bit, and it has to be maintained throughout. So that's your basis, okay? So anytime that you try to go beyond that, if she starts to pull or jerk on you or get really heavy, go back to softening, hold until she softens, and then ask her to move the hind again. So you always start at a stop, have her soften, then ask her hind to move around, and always hold her. Don't release until she's soft. Don't release the disengaging the hindquarters until she's soft. Don't let go of her when she's heavy on you, is what I'm trying to say. So we'll continue a little bit. And she's kind of more walking. Let's go back and slow that down a little bit. So you see how she's not planting that right front leg? She's moving all of her legs around as she goes around. And with a real disengagement, it needs to be where the inside front foot stays in the same spot. It can be moved up and down within that same spot to lessen the strain on the joints. Some horses do that, and that's fine. I wouldn't get after her for that, but she's not keeping that inside front foot in the same spot. She's moving around, just walking. And so what you do for that, now first obviously, like I said, she has to be soft to the bit, but then what you would do to correct that is every time that inside front foot, right when it goes to lift off the ground, and you may need to, you should be looking up, you may need to kind of give a glance down occasionally to get your timing correct while you're learning it. Obviously, ideally, like I always say, you should be looking up, not down at the ground or at your horse. But if you don't have anybody there to help you, you may need to kind of glance down occasionally, or preferably if you have somebody that can say, okay, now, and just give you a cue every time that inside front foot goes to pick up. And so what you want to do is right as that foot is leaving the ground, you're going to bump that inside rein just straight up and just give it one good bump. If you bump her every time that inside front foot goes to step, it won't take long, maybe one time around, and she'll pretty quickly figure out that foot shouldn't be moving if your timing is correct. If you're accidentally bumping another foot, then it's just going to confuse her. But if you can keep your timing good and bump that inside foot, and you may even practice on the ground with her where you can watch it, and then because you just want her inside hind leg to be engaging and her other 3 feet moving. That inside front needs to stay planted. She is stepping under for the most part, though. I think she had a few steps that were not totally crossing over, but for the most part, that's not too much of a problem for her. So we'll go ahead and move on. You'll go to the other side. And once again, I would keep her stopped, and I would get her soft before ever asking her to move. And then the other thing too, as you come around, and so go ahead and see it. You're bumping with your right leg, right there. You're bumping with your right leg, and I'm not sure what you're trying to do with that. If maybe you were trying to do a disengage the hindquarter, or I'm sorry, if you're trying to do a turn on the haunches right there. It looks more like a disengaging because you pull her head around, and that's what you did to the other side. So I think that's what you were trying to do. but it needs to be the inside foot because your horse is going to move away from your leg. And so if you want, in the disengaging, the front stays, that inside front foot is the pivot foot, and the hind end moves away from the direction she's bent. So you've got her head pulled around to the left, her left front foot should stay planted, her left hind leg should cross over the other hind leg. And so because she moves away from your leg, it should be the left leg that you use when you're bumping her or putting pressure on with your leg. So I'm not really sure what you were trying to accomplish with your right leg on. If you were doing a turn on the haunches where you were moving the front end, then yes, you would be using your right leg if you were moving the front end to the left. But you're actually wanting to kick the hind out to the right, and so it needs to be your left leg that's cueing her there. So we'll go ahead and move on. You're starting to do a little bit of side pass here. And actually, knowing, having worked with you guys just recently, that was actually really good. That she didn't shut down on you, and she actually moved when you put your leg on her. So I wouldn't complain too much about that one right there. That was a pretty good one. And obviously it's not a perfect side pass, but obviously as you keep working on it and improving it. But like I said, for you guys, for her to move off of your leg, that's a score. Okay, now on this side, not so good. So right there, I'm going to go back a little bit and slow it down. Right there, I can see her pull her head real quick. That's another thing, again, get her soft. Anytime that she jerks on you, stop what you're doing, get her soft first, and then continue on with what you were asking, because if she's going to be jerking on you, it's ignoring it won't ever get any better. It'll only continue to get worse, and it's a nasty habit to have to break. So I would really focus on that, and just making sure you're pretty quiet with your hands, so I don't think that that's really the problem, but just making sure that you're using your hands in a way that guides her and not necessarily pulling her from one side to the other. But as long as you're guiding her well, if she starts to jerk on you or anything, I would really make a point, just really pay attention to that and get her soft before moving on with the exercise. So anyway, side passing to the right here. Kind of shut down a little bit. She's not wanting to move her hinds. She's going a little bit. But she was not crossing over with that inside hind leg. So what I would actually do for her, and you can do this to either side if you get stuck at all, when you're asking for the side pass, if she's not wanting to move her hind, if she's only moving the front, and you've moved your leg back a little bit to cue the hind, but if she's just not moving the hind, or if she's really stuck overall and not moving at all, then I would, in this case, you're side passing the right, I would reach down my inside rein, which is the left rein, I'd bring her head around, and I'd disengage the hindquarters. And that's kind of like a little bit of a cheat code there. It's a really easy way to unlock the horse that doesn't understand the side pass, doesn't understand moving sideways off the leg. Sky does, but that's something that you guys are working on together. So when you ask for the side pass, if your leg's starting to get tired or she's not moving off the leg, or like I said, she's not moving her hind end, because it's very important that she stays straight and moves equally with her hind end as she does with the front, and not just throwing the shoulder out and the hind's dragging. Slide your hand down the rein, pull her head around, using the same leg, move her off of that leg and get her to move her hind end. Even if she gives you a little bit of a side forward, but it's not a very good sideways, just disengage the hindquarters, and that's a little bit of a trick to get her side passing much better. Okay, now we're going to side pass again from the front. Good job looking where you're going, and good use of your body. Not too bad a correction with your reins. There. And again, for her, considering she didn't shut down, that wasn't too bad for her, and you did a good job. I like to see you looking up where you're going, and you used your leg in a good position and kept her fairly straight. She was kind of a little bit meandering around, but it wasn't bad at all. I wouldn't complain too much about that one for where you guys are at. But when we watched it from behind, the right side was also the better one. So now let's see to the left. Again, good job looking up where you're going. Okay, see right there where she does that head thing, I would totally forget about the side pass for a minute and get her soft, get her rounding, get her to break at the pole, get her nose down where she feels soft in your hands and she's not jerking on you. I do a little bending back and forth, get her head down again, bend her back and forth, and then when she feels more supple and where she's actually paying better attention to the bit and she's not jerking on you, then immediately try your side pass again. So I wouldn't just abandon the side pass, but I would focus anytime she jerks or throws her head up in the air, go back to softening to the bit, focus on that, and then once she's soft, immediately resume what you were trying to ask for. But she is moving off of your leg and not shutting down, so there's a plus there. Now here, it's a little bit hard to see since it's so far away, but I believe you're asking for a leg yield. And one of the things, you did such a great job side passing, looking up to the side where you're going. I would do the same thing in the leg yield. I'd be looking up to the right. Okay, and then now you switch sides. So here I'd be looking up to the left. And you got a little bit of sideways on both sides. It wasn't a super great correct leg yield, but again, for where you guys are at, just getting her to move off of the leg, that was totally fine. I would even focus on maybe moving her shoulder and not so much trying to get a correct leg yield, but just kind of picking up your rein and putting your inside rein and leg on her and just getting her to move over a step, let her walk forward, move her over a step, and just kind of play around like that, getting her to be really sensitive to your leg. And so for that, coming from that standpoint of, like I said, her getting her sensitive to your leg, those leg yields weren't bad at all. She was moving sideways, but then what you're going to want to do as you progress is start to straighten her out. So you'll have your leg moved back a little bit so she doesn't drag her hind as much as she does. So you start to get her hind taking good decent sized steps, keeping up with her front, and then you would get her head down a little bit better on the bit and use your outside rein backing down at her shoulder to keep her straight, because you don't really want a whole lot of bend in the leg yield. You want a slight flexion, and all that means is if you were to look down, you could see her inside eye, but you don't want a whole lot more than that. You just want that little bit of flexion, and then to keep her body straight as she moves sideways, and you don't want her leading with the shoulder so much. Overall though, because I've given you a little bit of criticism and critique, because that's, I'm assuming, what you sent your videos in for, but I do want to really encourage you and tell you that overall, I'm really glad to see her moving sideways off of your leg, because the last few times I worked with you, that was one of the things that I know that you really struggled with, was her just completely ignoring your leg. So continue what you're doing. You guys will continue to improve, and like I said, I'm really happy to see that she's actually is acknowledging your leg, that you're putting your leg on her, and is actually has any sort of trying to move sideways now. So good job. Okay, so now you're lunging her a little bit. And your body position's pretty good. You had a good transition there, corrected her just right, and she only needed that one bump. And then again, great correction, excellent timing. And your change of direction is totally perfect use of your body. Excellent job. She responded really well. The only thing that I would change, just be careful that you don't really let your lunge line drag on the ground, because then you have a good chance of her stepping on it. So just be careful with the lunge line. And then I also want to point out that how you have her bit up is perfect. I'm glad you were able to figure that out with the bareback pad to do the same sort of thing like what we had done in the saddle. But anyway, keep up the good work.